Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. The energy crisis in Europe continues to evolve and to worsen. Over the weekend, we had Vladimir Putin make the announcement that the flow of gas through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline would be shut down indefinitely due to maintenance issues, and now he has taken it a step further and he has announced that flows of gas will not resume through Nord Stream 1 until sanctions against Russia by the West and by European nations are lifted. And I don't think that this is any huge surprise, that it wasn't really maintenance issues that were slowing the flows of gas, but now that this is out in the open, it does absolutely step the conflict up a notch. And the European Union Commission just came out with a list of measures they're going to be taking to get energy prices under control and to respond to this reduction in the flows of gas from Russia. And in today's video, I want to cover what it is that they plan to do and also why I believe that these measures are actually going to exacerbate the crisis and what the consequences of that ultimately could be, because it has some pretty serious implications for inflation and for the global economy and also for precious metals, gold and silver. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's get to it. Okay, so the latest development in this ongoing energy crisis in Europe is that Vladimir Putin has now announced that the Nord Stream 1 pipeline will be shut down until sanctions against Russia are lifted. And this certainly seems to up the ante in this conflict somewhat, as up until now, the Russians have maintained at least a pretense that the cause for the slowdown in gas through the pipeline was maintenance issues and technical problems. But now they have dispensed with that pretense, and it becomes obvious what this is all about. The slowdown and the cutoff of Russian gas to Europe is retaliation for the economic sanctions that have been imposed on Russia. And I don't think that this is news to anybody, but the fact that now Russia has openly stated this does take this to the next level. And this is an article from BBC News that highlights the European Union Commission's planned response to this development and to the developing energy crisis throughout the European Union. And I want to go over some of the specific steps that the EU plans to implement, because several of them, I believe, are going to exacerbate this problem rather than make it any better. And they're not addressing the real underlying cause. And it's all about price controls and intervention. And a lot of these steps, I believe, are going to have unintended consequences. And that could have some pretty serious implications for the global economy, for inflation. And so I want to go over those one by one, starting off with the first thing they're proposing here, which is capping the price of Russian gas. And, obviously, if the European Union puts a cap on what they're willing to pay for gas, if it's below the market price or what Russia wants to sell the gas for, they may not sell any gas to them at all. And that's exactly what we heard from the Russians when they were responding to this proposed price cap. Putin said, quote, "We will not supply gas, oil, coal, heating oil. We will not supply anything," unquote, if it goes against Russia's interests. And certainly selling energy to essentially your enemy below market price doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I think that that is fairly predictable. But this price cap isn't the only proposed measure, and I want to go over the whole list. But first, I do want to say a quick thank you to today's video sponsor, silverbotanicals.com, household and personal hygiene products that are powered by nano silver and all natural essential oils. Don't forget to check them out with the link down in the description today and use coupon code STACKER to save 10% off your order. Okay, so back to the article here. European gas storage is up to 82%, which that's a good thing for Europe heading into the winter. At least they will have some kind of a buffer. But I really suspect that as demand for gas and heating and energy goes up into the winter, if the Russians fully cut off the supply of gas, then this may not be enough to get Europe through the winter. And it also mentions that before the invasion in February of the Ukraine by Russia, Russia provided about 40% of the EU's imported gas. But today, that number has been cut down to only 9%. But I think this is really important, that even though the Russians have cut off a significant portion of the gas that they're supplying to Europe, they're still supplying 9% of their gas. So in an already tight market, the Russians still have the ability to turn the screws up a little bit more on Europe. They've still got those Soviet-era pipelines. traveling through Ukraine that are supplying some gas, and also they have a pipeline to Turkey which gas is still flowing through. So they do still have a little bit of leverage, and they could make the situation worse than it already is if they decide to do that. And some of these additional measures are possibly going to lead to that. And also, they're just going to have adverse effects on the European economy in general. Here's the list of additional steps that the European Commission is considering taking in addition to that price cap on Russian gas. One of those is a mandatory target for reducing electricity use at peak hours. So read rolling blackouts. I mean, I don't know exactly what that could mean other than just shutting off power to certain users during peak hours, perhaps the implementation of some kind of smart meters. But whatever it is, it's going to involve shortages. And then also they want to put a cap on revenues for companies that are making unexpected profits from low-cost electricity, such as renewable energy. So basically they want to limit the price that utility companies producing energy from, say, solar or wind are selling their electricity for. But that, of course, could backfire, because if they're going to reduce the profits and revenues that companies are making, that is going to take away all incentive for alternative energy companies to expand their capacity. I mean, if they're going to have caps placed on what they can sell the power for, why would they up their capacity to produce more power? Also, they want a solidarity contribution from fossil fuel companies. So that's more of the same. They want probably a special tax on what they call windfall profits by these fossil fuel companies. But again, in the long run, that is going to reduce overall capacity in the system, because if fossil fuel companies can't keep their profits, what are they going to use to invest in expanding their capacity? And so, limiting the profitability of these companies from electricity and energy production is exactly the opposite of what you want to do when you're heading into a situation like this, especially one that looks like it's going to stick around for the long term, like the current conflict. And then also, they want to help struggling energy companies cope with the volatile energy market with liquidity support. And that basically means bailouts, printing more euros to distribute to these companies to keep them above water. But of course, everybody ultimately will be paying for those bailouts with higher inflation and more debt-financed spending. So ultimately, all of these, even though they might be a quick short-term fix, all of these things look like they could potentially backfire and make the whole energy crisis worse in the long run. So what does all of this mean? Well, I think that what we can take away from this is that this crisis is going to get worse. I haven't seen anything in the proposed measures that looks like it will fix the problem. They're not talking about using free market solutions. They are talking about controlling the economy, implementing price controls, implementing rationing, implementing rolling blackouts possibly. And all of that in the long run is going to be very damaging to the economy. And also the idea of bailing out these energy companies. I mean, they've already got rapidly rising inflation over there, and that's just going to be like throwing gasoline on a fire. And as the economies of Western Europe implode moving forward as a result of this energy crisis, we throughout the West, including here in the US, we need to get ready for the economic aftershocks which are going to reverberate around the world. Because certainly if Europe experiences a depression, a recession, and I mean, they are headed that way, this is going to be catastrophic for those economies, then we can expect those to exacerbate and make much worse the recession that we are already in here in the US, and which is likely to get much deeper. Because when that happens, when this contagion reaches our shore, I think we know what's going to happen. The Fed is going to do just what the European Central Bank is likely to end up doing, and that is to print more cash, to bail out failing companies, quantitative easing, the buying of government debt on a massive scale. They'll do that to stave off a potential debt crisis, a potential collapse, but that is going to lead to drastically higher inflation. And it's at that time that safe haven assets like physical gold and physical silver are really going to shine, when it becomes clear that there are few solutions to this crisis that we are facing, and that things are going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think that this crisis in Europe regarding energy is going to get worse? How do you think it'll affect the US economy? How do you think it will affect gold, silver, and inflation? I would love to know what you have to say, so leave a comment down below, and I will catch you next time. Thank you all very much for watching. Smart Silver Stacker, out.